Okay, so let's record this class. As you notice, I'm not yet uploading anything, but I am planning to today. So in case you would like to rewatch our previous lectures, you're actually more than welcome to do that. So this time, the part two of our lecture about Rome will begin. This is the part wherein it's the events after the death of Julius Caesar. So actually, I really changed my background to somehow in line with the theme of our lecture, Roman Empire. This wallpaper right here is actually the situation of the Rubicon, the crossing the Rubicon of Julius Caesar. So this is Julius Caesar together with his legion of soldiers, and they cross the Rubicon River. In that situation, the Caesars crossing the Rubicon River is actually the start of him being deviant, him being somehow not listening to what the Senate is actually trying to tell him. So, in the situation of crossing the Rubicon, Julius Caesar actually just showed how much bravery he has in his body, na he's willing to actually, defy the Senate. So, yan. So, in our previous lectures, we talk about Caesar being such a good person of having different reforms in the Roman Empire. One of those is actually changing the taxation, giving land to the landless, where the Gracchus brother actually somehow failed to do. Okay, so things like that. So a lot of things that Caesar contributed into, so with him being such a statesman, being such a good leader, his end is actually very controversial. So in the Ides of March or in the 15th of March, he was actually assassinated inside the Senate. So while they are having their chamber meeting, so if you could recall, in our Senate now in present time, they have that moment wherein all senators are inside and then they talk about the laws that they need to pass, they do debate and things like that. So imagine that situation, but in ancient Rome time. So Caesar is actually having his speech when all of a sudden one of the senators came to him really close and then brought out his knife and then stabbed Caesar. He's the first senator, and then another senator, another senator. How many senators ba are in ancient Rome? 300, right? So there are 300. So imagine the body wounds of Caesar after that assassination. 300 people somehow alternately stab Caesar to death. And then the last individual that stabbed him is his good friend Brutus, who in his last words, this is according to a Shakespearean play. So we actually do not know if Caesar was still able to speak after what happens to him after all the stabbing. But according to a Shakespearean play, the last words of Caesar is et tu Brute, meaning even you, Brutus. So with such praise right there, it's like the very epitome or the very meaning of betrayal. That statement, even you, Brutus. So that's actually a very painful statement to hear. So like that. So that's Caesar's story. That's why Julius Caesar, his effect on history is very dramatic because of the way he was killed. So of course, him being the most likable general, the most likable leader, and with all the help he actually did to the poor in ancient Rome, you will see that he is really well loved. Now imagine a well loved leader being assassinated like that. The effect of that to Rome is chaos. Okay, chaos. Don't you know that after that happened, some of the senators fled. So they escaped the chamber. They escaped the place of where they're having their meeting. But some of them were actually trapped because what the people did, someone saw what they did to Caesar, and then he went out and he told everyone the senators are killing Caesar. So that's why the people actually gathered around the place and they barricaded it, and they did not let any of the other senators get out. So actually, whenever a senator will go out, they will throw stone to them for them to actually be in there. So imagine there are no police or soldiers right at that moment. It's the common people who actually barricaded the place to make sure that the criminal will not get out. Some of them actually use the back door or the sewage system. They really escape. They really try to escape. But majority of them were actually caught, and there's a massive chaos in the city of Rome during that time. People are like hurting the senators whenever they see them, and things like that. It's just really really chaotic. So when they finally take out Caesar's body out of the place, it was really such a dramatic moment in that ancient history of Rome. To that, so this is what happened after, because there's no leader of Rome and people do not respect the Senate anymore. So there's no rule, right? There's no somehow there's no leader to control the people. So what happened after Caesar's death is that according to Caesar's last will and testament, if anything happens to him, he wanted his adopted son. Actually, it's his nephew, the son of his sister, si Octavius Caesar. So basically, according to his last will, anything happens to him, his properties will actually go to his adopted son or nephew, Augustus Caesar. So the people take that as like, Caesar somehow loves so much and trusts so much his adopted son. So basically, they use the last will of Caesar as like the transferring of power. So imagine this for Octavius' part. He's not a politician. He's just this young man who happens to be an adopted son of Caesar, and all of a sudden he became the new leader. You get what I'm trying to say in here. He's not even a senator. He's not a politician. He's just the adopted son or nephew of Julius Caesar. But the throne somehow, or the power of the Roman Empire, was transferred to him. All because the people do not trust the senators anymore and their government. So they love Caesar so much that they're willing to just give it to someone younger. Later, I'll show you actually a sculpture of Octavius Caesar. He's very young when he got into this. Now, you might be thinking that's too much of a duty for a young and first-timer politician like Octavius. He did not actually take the power all by himself. He actually have two generals who are very close to Caesar as well that assisted him. So imagine them as like triumvirate again. Later, I'll show you who they are. Pero this is like the events, the days and weeks after Caesar's death. So what happened in there is actually one of the closest general to Caesar is Mark Antony. So Antony vow somehow to avenge what happened to Caesar. So he actually launched series of campaign, series of somehow manhunt operation to actually look for Brutus, because Brutus is the mastermind, right, of Caesar's assassination. So Mark Antony avenged Caesar's death by defeating the group of Brutus in the Battle of Philippi. And Mark Antony was successfully able to kill Brutus in that Battle of Philippi. So now that the culprit or the mastermind Brutus is already somehow eliminated, but then again, I would like to also give you an idea. Brutus is not the only one who actually planned for this. Even Pompey and Crassus, the previous members of the triumvirate, it's very obvious, right, that they are somehow jealous of Caesar. So they have like their people as well help Brutus to make this happen. Because if it is just Brutus, it's too big of a crime to be done by one man. So there are like enabler, or they're like contributor to this as well. But it's Brutus who somehow receive all the hate and all the burden of this situation. So now that the mastermind is dead, Brutus is dead, killed by Mark Antony, they need to look forward already. They need to make sure that the future of Rome is solidified. That's why there became a second triumvirate. The first triumvirate is Caesar, Crassus, Pompey. Now, the third triumvirate, Rome was actually controlled by these three men. First, of course, Octavius, also known as Octavian. Si Octavian Caesar is like the grandson slash adopted, I mean, grand nephew slash adopted son of Julius Caesar. Then, Mark Antony, a trusted general of Caesar as well. Lepidus is also a trusted general of Julius Caesar. So basically, these three men, Octavius, Mark Antony, and Lepidus, they divided the Roman Empire into three, and they became like somehow emperor of each. Okay, so somehow they view themselves as equal. Okay, but then again, one thing with world history, when it things cannot be shared, so there will be chaos within the three, among the three. So by the way, just to remind you, this is the first triumvirate. This is the second triumvirate. Now, here are like how they divide it. Okay, so they shared absolute power, meaning to say there's no one better than the other. So Octavius is the one in charge of the West Roman Empire, meaning the city of Rome itself. So the Italian peninsula, that's for Octavius to lead. And then Lepidus is the one in charge of the African part, so the Carthage, okay, Carthage part. And then from Egypt to Mesopotamian region, it is Mark Antony's side, or it's his duty. However, eto na. It's like imagine them like bros, like they're like like a pack of brothers to lead the Rome, but it's like a woman who breaks that partnership of those three men, the triumvirate. It's because Mark Antony fell in love with Cleopatra because Mark Antony is in charge of Egypt. Eh. So during that time, Egypt is actually under the family of Cleopatra. Cleopatra back then is not yet the queen, but she's powerful in Egypt and she wanted to be queen. So what Cleopatra actually is doing in politics is like she's befriending Roman officials to actually be, close to power. What Julius Caesar back then did. That's why there's this issue that probably Cleopatra had a relationship with Julius Caesar back then because Julius Caesar actually assisted Cleopatra to kill Cleopatra's father and brother for her to be in good position for the throne. But since Caesar died, the next person in power is Mark Antony. So and Mark Antony and Cleopatra, they somehow find time to fall in love, and they became really really strong in that side of Egypt. So yeah. So here are like some images I found. They really romanticize the story of Mark Antony and Cleopatra. If you're actually familiar with some movies or some literature, a lot of stories are actually created based on the story of these two because it's like no, you and me against the world kind of love story. So they wanted to rule Egypt, but that is actually against the triumvirate because that Egypt is supposed to be the property of the entire Roman Empire. But what Mark Antony is doing in here is like as if he's offering Egypt to Cleopatra. Like as if Mark Antony is choosing Cleopatra over his duty to be like the member of the triumvirate. So this is actually a big problem, politically speaking. And here are like some paintings as well. Some said the image of Cleopatra really looked like this, like Egyptian, Mediterranean. I mean, Middle Eastern looking, not this one that's typically being shown in media. So this is actually what happened to their love story somehow. They met nearly 3 years after Julius Caesar's death, all because Mark Antony is busy, finding the man that somehow plot the Caesar's death. So Antony summons Cleopatra to Tarsus, and it is actually love at first sight, because what actually Cleopatra did, she really dressed for the occasion. Like when she learned that Mark Antony wants to see him, she really make herself appear really really beautiful. So to cut the story short, they fell in love, and there's actually this situation wherein 6 months up they met, and then 6 months after Antony's return to Rome, because he needs to report back to Rome, they learned that the leader of Egypt, Cleopatra, was actually given birth to a twin. Okay, so some people believe during that time that it was actually Mark Antony's child, which is true. But back then, they're denying it because they don't want to somehow, be issued about their relationship. But as time passes by, they can no longer hide that idea that they are, together. So what happened in here? It angered Octavius. Okay, it angered Octavius. And of course, when Octavius is mad, definitely Lepidus will also be with him, because what actually Antony did is really against the triumvirate idea, and at the same time the Roman Empire somehow would be shattered if Antony will be keep on pleasing Cleopatra, because what Cleopatra wants is Egypt, the independence of Egypt to her. So that's why Octavius actually launched an attack, and Octavius group wanted to invade Egypt. So when landed in Egypt, Mark Antony and Cleopatra gathered support. So they're willing to fight Augustus na. So this is like a part of Octavius versus Mark Antony. Okay. I'll just skip that muna just to give you an information in here in the last moments of Mark Antony, because in that massive warfare, in that massive battle happening, Mark Antony felt that he would be defeated. Okay, he would be defeated. So he actually retreated and he went back to their place, where like somehow the palace of Mark Antony and Cleopatra. And it is assumed in there that Mark Antony committed suicide because of his impending defeat. He knows that he's about to be defeated na by Octavius, so he committed suicide. And then somehow, days after, Cleopatra also committed suicide on her bedroom using a poisonous snake. Okay, a poisonous snake. So that's the first version. Okay, because one thing about their ending, it's been romanticized in so many literature and in so many accounts that there are like different story how they actually die. Some said that's why there's this statement I have in here. Some said they committed suicide, just like what I've told you, that Anthony felt that he'll be defeated, so he stabbed himself. Then days later, Cleopatra is so sad, she poisoned herself through that poisonous snake. So very Romeo and Juliet, right? But some said they were murdered by the somehow spy or other people loyal to Augustus, to Octavius. Kasi Augustus is his another name. So Augustus Octavius Caesar. So yeah, that's why the death of Cleopatra and Mark Antony is actually still in question. Is it truly suicide, just like what Octavius said to the people, or it's murder? So that. Okay. So now that Mark Antony was killed or somehow is dead, and Lepidus is not that very strong. He's not military speaking, he's not that very mighty. Okay. So basically, in short, Augustus or Octavian is like the only one powerful enough to get everything. So what happened in here? Instead of having triumvirate, now that Antony's dead, now that Antony's dead, it's just Octavius who control everything. So from three region, it has become one and all him. So basically, just try to imagine it. What the senators are trying to stop Caesar of, kasi they don't want Caesar to be like an emperor or a dictator. What they're trying to stop Caesar from, it was what happened to Octavius. Octavius became the dictator for life somehow, or the emperor. That's why he actually changed his name. He's actually being called Octavius Caesar, right? But now he changed his name. The moment he got the totality of the power, Mark Antony eliminated, Lepidus not doing anything, he changed his name. He called himself Augustus, which actually means majestic. And he became the imperator or emperor of Rome. So it's Emperor Augustus Octavius Caesar, the very first emperor of Roman Empire. Okay, it's not his grand uncle, it's not his adopted father, Julius Caesar, but it is him who became the first emperor of Roman Empire. What a story for them, no? We still have last 7 minutes, but of course, we don't want to max that out because it will be awkward in in end. That's why to continue the remaining of the lesson, Pax Romana or Roman peace, I will end this session, and then please rejoin again. Okay? So see you in the next Zoom.